Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I'm really happy you're here. And I'm really happy to talk about this particular topic, which came about because I was sitting and thinking about a book that I really liked a lot the other day and how I might want to reread it. And then I thought, I wonder if there are other books like this that I would really like. And that brought to mind some other books that I had read, and I had some books on my shelves that were like them. And so I ended up with this top. If I liked this, then I'll probably like that. So let's get started. The first one on my list is White Oleander by Janet Fitch. I read this when I was still working in the child welfare system, so it's been a long time ago. It came out a while ago. It was very popular at the time. I noticed when I went back to Goodreads, I didn't write a review. I only gave it 3 stars, which is good. That's a solid like for me. And I do remember, though, that it was very lyrically, beautifully written, and I don't know if it was because I was still in that system of work and it was very difficult work to do, or if it was something else. But I might want to take a look at it again. And I've unhauled it, so I may not. But White Oleander followed a mom who had been charged with murder of her husband, and her daughter therefore enters into the foster care system as a result of that happening. It was an interesting plot for me. It was an interesting relationship between the mom and the daughter, and I really enjoyed it. I do remember really enjoying it. Because I liked White Oleander, I thought I might like The Language of Flowers by Vanessa Diffenbach, which has been on my shelves for a long time. I was also at that time, sorry, it's glaring, in the child welfare system, and decided I didn't necessarily want to get to it right away. And then I just haven't ever. I've looked at it, I've noticed it, and I just didn't. So I think I might like it. This one follows a girl named Victoria Jones who has been in the child welfare system her entire life, and she is then aging out. And when children age out of the child welfare system, it can be a very difficult transition. Outcomes are not always positive. This character ends up homeless, essentially, like kind of living in a park, and she decides to make that experience more beautiful by planting a garden. And she has a particular interest in gardening. And that's all I know. And that's really all I want to know. It's short, but this came out in 2011. It's about time. Either read it or unhaul it, right? Okay, the next one, if I liked this, maybe I'll like that, is Where the Crawdads Sing. I read this a few years ago when it first came out. Delia Owens is the author. It follows a child really, who is a teenager, young. Well, I think it starts out when she's younger. She doesn't have great parenting. Her mom, as I recall, leaves her with her father, and her father is really just useless to her. And so she has to really fend for herself, learn to do everything. She's left alone for terribly long periods of time. And she doesn't, for that reason, really relate to other kids her age, but she's kind of shunned by them, and she's very, very poor. She meets some people that really support her, not as taking her in as parents, but they just really support her. But I did really like it, and Delia Owens did a great job of kind of creating an arc that made me like it more and more and more and more as I went along, I would say. If I liked that, this is a stretch in some ways, but bear with me. I've had this on my backlist and on my shelves for a while. I can't find it in the boxes that are still in the garage, but this one is called The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. Eowyn Ivey, Irish names always interest me. But this is set in the 1920s, so it's historical speculative fiction. Bear with me on that. Jack and Mabel are childless, and they live in this remote area in Alaska. Their marriage is really challenged by the fact that they're childless and they're kind of going in different directions. But one night they build a snow person and they go to bed, and in the morning the snow person is gone, but there's a girl who showed up in the middle of the night with no apparent story or no idea of what happened, how she arrived. So they take her in, and she calls herself Faina, and she's a child of the woods. I think that that's what made me think about this as an if I loved Where the Crawdads Sing, I might really like this, because she was like sort of a child of the swamp, essentially. So different time, different location and setting, different in the sense that that's kind of a I would say it's literary fiction, but it also has some mystery thriller aspect to it. And this, I think, is speculative fantasy fiction. I think, though, that they might both end up having some very similar qualities. And I do think I will like The Snow Child. My youngest, Megan, read it. She unhauled it to me. She doesn't keep as many books as I do, but I think she liked it. But it has a 3.99 rating on Goodreads, which is really good. So I do think that it is a read worth taking an interest in. The next one I adored. A 5-star read for me for sure. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was my first read by this author, and I devoured it. And I actually just recently acquired it from my library they were unhauling it. So this one is mine. I just have to take the plastic cover off. But this follows Evelyn Hugo. She's an actress in Hollywood. She's very famous, very successful. And it is her telling her story to someone else about her life and really telling us all about these relationships and what happened to her along the way. And I just loved it. So I thought, if I loved that, what else might I love? So this one I researched, and I found a book that I really had heard of, but it wasn't on my radar. And I was like, oh gosh, this might be great. So it's called The Swans of Fifth Avenue, and it's by Melanie Benjamin. And The Swans of Fifth Avenue actually is fiction about Truman Capote and Babe Paley. I couldn't remember her name. And Babe was married to William Paley, who was the founder of CBS. And this follows these glamorous, glitzy, what they called swans in New York, and how their lives, Truman Capote and Babe's lives intersected, and how that relationship kind of had its ups and downs, I think. And just, it sounds like, yeah, like bars and parties, and it sounds fun. So I think it would be very, very similar to Evelyn Hugo. This actually happened recently because I was learning about a new release, and I thought, oh, that sounds a lot like that. So it did happen organically for me. I read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager a few years ago. I pre-ordered it actually before it was released. And I love Riley Sager's work. I really do. They're creepy, they're haunting, they're fun, and they're quick reads. Home Before Dark follows a woman whose dad dies, and she is left this home that she lived in when she was a young person, and her family fled from because it was haunted. They then moved, obviously, but she was young, and she's kind of put those memories away because it was not easy. And he writes a book about this house. So, and it's pretty famous. This book is pretty well read. So she then has this stigma attached to her because of that. And then she has this house that's left to her, and she has to go and fix it up in order to be able to sell it. And some things start to happen while she's there. This is a book within a book. As I remember, that was part of what was so fascinating about it, was that sometimes you were reading her experience and sometimes you were reading his book about their experience when she was younger. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. So if I enjoyed that one a lot, I think I might like How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, which is a new release. I had been thinking about that one as a possibility. I've not read anything by Grady Hendrix before. I'm curious about Grady Hendrix because a lot of people like that author. And the How to Sell a Haunted House novel starts on the premise that this girl and her brother are bequeathed this home that their parents owned, and their parents have both died, and they go to fix it up so that they can sell it. And obviously it's haunted based on the title of this novel. So I think I would enjoy that too. And I had been thinking, oh, I might want to read that. So that worked out really well. Blake Crouch is an auto buy for me. I've read not his old stuff, but I've read everything from the Pines trilogy to current day. I flew through this book. I didn't own it at the time. I borrowed it from my son. And when it came up on Book of the Month as an add-on for me one month, I grabbed it. So this follows two characters, Barry Sutton, who's investigating a phenomenon called a false memory syndrome, where people have memories of things that didn't actually happen and of a life that they didn't actually live. And those memories cause them to go insane, essentially. Then he meets a neuroscientist named Helena Smith, who has dedicated her life to an experiment or a project where she tries to recreate memories for people, that when she hooks them up to this machine, those memories come back so vividly that they feel like they are really there. So they're able to relive memories that in their lives are important to them and really useful. Their lives intersect. That's all I'm going to tell you about this. Sci-fi, clearly, but Okay, so then I think the other day when I'm thinking about Blake Crouch, and here's how this happened. I was teaching a class at my son's. I was helping take care of my grandkids. I had to teach a class that night, and I'm sitting there waiting for the participants to come into the Zoom room, and I happened to look at my son's shelf, and I saw another book that I had loved called The Martian that I had borrowed from him and read. And that made me realize that I have this on my shelves by Andy Weir, Hail Mary. And I thought, okay, maybe if I love recursion and I love The Martian, I will love Hail Mary and I will prioritize this. I think I have not prioritized it because it's a chunker, but I did get it, I think, when it was first offered on Book of the Month. This was not an add-on for me. I do think I will like Andy Weir's book. I did fly through The Martian as well. A lone astronaut, an impossible mission, an ally he never imagined. Now, I don't want to know a whole lot, except that Ryland wakes up on this spaceship and has no memory of how he got there. And then all the other people that are on the ship are dead. I think it tells you this in the synopsis. Yep, his crewmates are dead. His memories start to return, and he starts to piece together what's happening and where he is, and then I guess what his mission is. I hear a lot of people love it. I have no fear that I won't like it, so I don't know why I haven't read it, but I haven't. And then the last one, I have this novel too, but it is in my boxes, so I couldn't find it for you, but that is a classic favorite of mine is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And Rebecca is a young woman, and she meets a man. They kind of fall in love pretty quickly, and he moves her to Manderley, which is his home. His home is in a rose garden, and a beautiful rose garden, and then between that and the sea is this mansion, this old mansion. And he had been married before, and his wife died. He takes Rebecca to this place. This novel has one of my favorite first lines of all time, which is, it's the first line of this novel is, "Last night I dreamed of Manderley again." This is a favorite of so many people, and it's so atmospheric. It's so creepy, spooky. It's so, like, I don't know, compelling to read, in my opinion. I've read it again and again and again. And when I got this book and I read the synopsis, I thought, this reminds me of Rebecca. and that is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. I don't know that everybody loves this, but it is a gothic kind of horror-y novel about a woman whose name is Beatrice. I can't hardly read it. That's the problem, is I don't have my reading glasses on because they catch the glare. Beatrice, her father is executed and she loses her home, but she meets Don Rodolfo Solorzano. He proposes. His wife also dies, like in Rebecca. He takes her to this home and he leaves her there, doesn't have a lot of communication with her, and she's trying to get to know the people that are caring for this home, and she's trying to understand her place in this home and what needs to be done, and some creepy, weird vibes start to remind me of Rebecca. She clings to a priest as an ally, so this might be a pretty, like, really haunting in a different way, but I still think it has Rebecca vibes, so I'm going to go with it. There you go. If I like those, I feel like I might like these that I presented to you today. And again, I think I will prioritize them for the next months of the year and just get to them when I get to them. Some of them I think will be faster than others, but I'm really excited, and I'm really happy to get some stuff off my backlist, to get some book of the months that I haven't read off my backlist and make room for the new ones, which are always coming in. It feels like, seems like. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these, either the ones I read in the past or the ones that I'm thinking about reading. I'd love to hear your comments about those books. And if you have any, if I read that, I might like this, books in your life, I'd love to hear about those too. Maybe we can read some of these together. You never know. That might be fun too. Thanks again. And as always, happy reading. Bye.